All right, we'll call to order today's July 16th, 2024 Standing Policy Committee on Water, Waste and Environment special meeting agenda. I'll do the land and water acknowledgement first. I'd like to acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Special note there on the Dakota people after the apology that was issued yesterday by the federal government. And so national homeland of the Red River Métis, our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Brian Mays. I'm the City Councilor for St. Patel Ward. I'll be chairing today's meeting, joined by my council colleagues, Councillor Gilroy, Councillor Santos, and Councillor Dobson, as well as city staff. We have two items today. Let's not forget the second, which will be considerably less time consuming than the first, I suspect. Do we have any? We don't need to approve minutes or anything, do we now? Special meeting. Just a couple of comments before we start in on delegations, all of whom, both of whom I'm going to do because the one has withdrawn. Couple of comments procedurally, which I think are important. This is not without precedent, but it's a bit unusual to have a special meeting. We are considering this award report on the biosolids facility, not for the whole project, but it is for a very large amount. So it's 90, the proposal here is 95 million. This stops at this committee. This does not go on to EPC nor to council. Big dollar amount, but the way our system works, this stops at this committee. The implication of a 2-2 vote would be this doesn't proceed. We do have appeal hearings sometimes where there's an appeal coming out of a matter, and you know the appellant needs to win. Hearing the tie goes to the, you just stay with the preceding decision. That's not the case here. So a tie here actually would matter in the business wouldn't proceed. I think it's also been, for clarity, it's an award. It doesn't necessarily mean the winner of this award is the bigger contract that's yet to come on biosolids, which will be hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. We know that. It does give them, the winner, an advantage in that they'll be doing the design. So I think it's not a guarantee. On the other hand, it certainly matters. It certainly does. It will help whoever wins this to get a leg up, to get a step up. Get a step up. What's the analogy? Get closer to winning the ultimate, the overall, the big project that's award that's yet to come. I don't think we have a time frame on that in front of us, though. That's not anything we're voting on. Finally, we've had an unusual occurrence that we've had not one but two submissions come in, be posted, and then be taken down. So apologies to the public for that. That I don't think I've ever seen that before, that we've had two sets of correspondence removed from the public agenda. I don't know who's seen what. It's unclear who has seen what part of any of those documents, but the decision from the city clerks was to take down that which had been submitted. We may come back to that eventually. So there was a submission from Building Trades, and there's a submission from Christian Labor Association, also known as CLAC. Both those were at least for at some period of time put up and then on our internet and then taken down. So
could we maybe get some clarity from the clerk on why?
I think that's a fair question.
Sure. So there's a provision in our procedure bylaw that dictates that delegations appearing before council with regard to a recommendation for award of contract shall only address council on the basis of the criteria set out in the invitation to tender and not any other issue. So both the submissions we received upon looking at them further were in conflict with this provision. And so they were removed from our agenda. So this rule applies to both submissions and also to delegations speaking into council on this matter.
Okay. So. We also do have the ability to move in camera at some point. I know that was discussed when we last met, so I'm expecting that, but we'll get to that after delegation. So
I'm just wondering, before we get started, if we could maybe ask the administration, just because there might be some information we need in order that they may have to look for to provide us for that information before we bring up delegations. Is that okay?
sure.
Yeah. Because I'd like to see, so if the clerks are saying the criteria set out by the invitation to tender, can we get that tender and what it looks like, if that could be sent to us? And also to our procurement policy, if we can just get that sent to us. And then the fairness commissioner report, if we can get that sent to us, the full report.
The fairness commissioner report hasn't been finalized yet.
Because this, we haven't awarded.
We
yet.
haven't awarded.
Like,
Yes.
like we have the excerpt of, like that's in our admin report, it quotes the certification, but the final document that has, the detailed, like this section, that's completed and sealed after the award.
Mhm.
But so in the admin report.
We get
before
what we
get-
have,
Yes.
do we have it all in full of what we got? That's,
In the admin report today, there's, we have an excerpt of it that speaks to the.
can we see what we got today though?
That's what we
That's
have.
it?
We worked with, because the fairness advisor doesn't complete their report until after award. So we worked with the fairness advisor to craft that statement.
Okay, and then I also would like to see our rating criteria on how we rate things,
Yes.
if we can send that to us, so we can have that information. Perfect.
Okay, fair enough.
Do they want that for? You want that for
Yeah.
this meeting, right?
Yeah, this meeting.
I guess on to delegations.
Okay, great. So first up, we have Ramona Cooey. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. I know you just told me. Executive Director of MCAM and ECAM, joining us in person today.
Thank you. There is a, can I close this? So that I'm not distracted by it, or will I be caught on that? Feels good.
Apparently it's needed for this.
Okay. Can I stand rather than sit? It would be my preference to be able to make eye contact with the city
Okay.
members rather than,
Sure.
be sitting behind a screen distracted by my own.
Did you get that? Did you get that?
Welcome. So you have up to 10 minutes to speak to us, and then we may have some questions.
10 minutes is long, I don't think I'll take it all. Councillor Mays, in your opening remarks, you had commented that that today's award is referencing the $95 million and that not the large $1 billion project that ultimately represents. In the reality of the large industrial constructor world, by making your decision today, your award, you will be making that decision as to who will be ultimately in charge of that $1 billion project, because no other contractor will be in a position to bid on it. They will not have the inside information that the other contractor does in order to be competitive. And the cost of them to actually create and a full tender would be upwards of $500,000. So in their best decision-making process, no other constructor at this point following the award of this $95 million PPA would actually go on to apply to be a constructor of the ultimate project. So I would back up then and say this is $1 billion. Less one penny, that is $999,999,999.99. That is a lot of money that you have been put in charge of on behalf of municipal, provincial, and federal taxpayers. And I'm confident that the expectation that the electorate has, of your scrutiny, of the award is more than the limited report that you've received to date of 8 pages. My name is Ramona Cooey. I'm the Executive Director of the Mechanical Contractors Association as well as the Electrical Contractors Association. Our members construct and service the mechanical and electrical vertical infrastructure of our province. I'd like to thank the water and waste staff for their role. Our contractors are certainly your partners in the role that we provide the city. Mr. Shanks, as a professional engineer, I have the utmost respect for you. My deceased husband was a professional engineer, as is my son, and they both work in the industrial setting as project managers. So I have the utmost respect for you in your position as well. Council, I'd like to thank you for providing the opportunity for delegations for slowing down this process, for awarding accepting the administrator's recommendations and providing this opportunity for a special meeting to consider the issue further. 2 weeks ago, following your initial meeting, I received a phone call from both my industry partners and members raising concerns about not only the RFP process, but the structure of the evaluation, as well as the information that council has received. I prepared a report yesterday for council and was going to email it to the clerk for inclusion in today's agenda. However, I was provided the notice that it had to be in accordance with procedure bylaw 50/2007. Unfamiliar with these bylaws, I did not send it to the clerk's office, and I sent it directly to the councilors so that they at least had my information. I would like the public to have the report that I've prepared, and I would like the staff and administration to have the report that I've prepared. I brought copies of it today, and I would suspect reading the clauses of the bylaw 51:12 and 51:13 that they reference invitations to tender where the administration report clearly identifies that this is not a tender process, that this is an RFP. So under that basis, I'll provide these and you can decide, and it's no disrespect to the clerk. I know that it's like gathering ants for these types of meetings and following governance schedules and interpreting law. I'll provide it, and if following your review, if you feel that it can be put into the public record, that's for your determination and for council. I would suspect after council has read the submission, that if it's not enough, that perhaps council should be reconsidering their bylaw 50/2007 to make some adjustments. Ultimately, after speaking with our members, our industry partners, as well as several interviews with both provincial and civic leaders, the Mechanical Contractors Association, as well as the Electrical Contractors Association, are ultimately requesting an independent third-party review of the RFP process relating to the new project prior to the consideration of the administrative recommendations. We believe that there have been deviations from the communicated RFP process. We believe that the analysis and process is inconsistent with the expressed intentions of City Council. And we believe that the information provided within the administrative report is inadequate, ensuring the standing committee's ability to fulfill their commitment as stewards of $1 billion of taxpayers' funds. Ultimately, the deviations from the communicated RFP process were outlined in a letter to you by the joint venture that was not the recommended party. So I won't go into that detail and I won't reference it here. I will reference, keep my water bottle. I will reference the analysis and process, which we believe is inconsistent with City Council intentions. On February 24th, 2022, Council approved future tenders for the new tech project required bidders to include the following as part of their bid submissions. And you identified 4 priorities. Specific information on its intended partnerships or self-directed plans to secure a skilled project labor workforce. Estimated numbers of classifications of skilled trade persons to be employed. Specific commitments to engage skilled labor, including targets for employment of Indigenous people and other underrepresented groups within Manitoba markets. And proposed plans and partnerships with organizations to promote employment and training initiatives for Indigenous and underrepresented groups within the Manitoba market. Highlighted during the February 16, 2022 EPC meeting, these four criteria were carefully worded. Compromises were received limitations of relevant free trade agreements and efforts of the Manitoba building trades. Page 5 of the report and identifies the RFP step 2 process included only 2 of the 4 requirements required by council. Those being identified in this section here. On page 5, highlighting the number 2 and 3, the Indigenous, referencing the Indigenous peoples and underrepresented groups. Items A and B of the initial recommendation from council were not considered. The intent of these criteria is to provide for a social procurement aspect of the RFP process. The social procurement information provided in the report is insufficient to satisfy the expectations of City Council. Additionally, the 45,000 points weighting is negligible. Secondly, during the February 16th, 2022 EPC meeting, then Councillor Scott Gillingham noted the new tech project would be the largest capital project the City of Winnipeg has ever undertaken. Under additional research, this is not only the largest capital project the City of Winnipeg has ever undertaken, this is one of the largest capital projects that will be taking place in North America. This is not a light decision. In October 2023, Mayor Gillingham announced recruitment of a Chief Construction Officer, a CCO.
We'll give you a couple more minutes.
Okay.
Moved by Councilor Gilroy, that's 2 more minutes? How many?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
All in favor?
Reporting directly to council. The position was approved in the 2024 budget. And we would like to know as an industry why this position was not filled and why this report is not prepared by the professional that was intended to head up these types of large infrastructure projects. Again, no insult intended to the gentleman, Mr. We that prepared the report or the people that he answered to within the department. Again, we believe on that basis that the intentions of the City Council were not followed. Thirdly, we felt that the commitment as stewards of public tax dollars that this report is insufficient. This is $1 billion decision we're making. We ask, based on the information that is in the report, how did the economic analysis of the Graham PCL Servco joint venture compare to that provided on page 3 of the report? According to page 3 of the administrative report, a $95 million investment by the city, province, and federal government will equate to a 0.2 million, otherwise known as $200,000 impact on Manitoba's gross GDP. How is that possible on an investment of this size? We would like to understand, or we would like the Standing Policy Committee to understand what the economic impact analysis was of the second proposal. Second, we'd like the RFP to step 2 results and report, quote, the fairness report provided by P1 Consulting. I guess I am going. Can I continue on?
1 minute to wrap up, maybe?
Sure.
Okay, all right.
Favor?
Within our report, we have asked 8 additional questions. Each question is based on the limited information that the standing committee was provided within the administration report. This report is inadequate for public elected officials to make a decision based on $1 billion. We ask that these 8 questions that we've communicated to you by email and that administration now has access to, that they be recorded in the public record and that council be provided the information.
Counselor, okay, so if that concludes things, so I think we have
Questions?
some questions.
2 seconds. We just need
Just
a process
brief-
issue. Yeah,
Sure, process. Brief recess now, Mr. Chair.
30 seconds.
For you to speak to the clerk, yeah. Okay,
That's right, just.
okay, so get shut down, we'll briefly shut down and come back with questions.
Thank you.
And we're back in session, thank you, so procedural, anyway.
Yeah, I'd
Counselor
like to
Gillies.
move that we go in camera.
Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
So we will move, hopefully briefly in camera, then return to ask Ms. Cooey some questions about her presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, we'll call the session back in order. We have some questions for our delegates. Ms. Cooey, I think we will try to avoid any references to the PCL letter. But other than that, I think the floor is open to questions from the council.
I guess I'll start it off.
Sure.
So you referenced the tender versus RFP process. Can you get into that a little bit more?
That you would need to speak with the contractor about. I was just referring to your wording.
Okay.
And specifically within the administrative report, it highlights on page.
Seven, as this is not a tender, if it's security was not required, is that where you're?
Okay. Thank you.
Page 7.
And that's why I highlighted it, and
Okay.
again, it was with the intention of not wanting to violate the city bylaw but also wanting to ensure, I didn't know what information in my submission would be allowed and not allowed. So wanting to ensure that I follow the rules, but at the same time, believing that in the public's interest, the entirety of my submission should be allowed and that perhaps council should consider amending clause 51, 12, and 51, 13.
And what, I can ask the administration that question. And just in terms of the cost here, you also referenced, which is a big shocker, the economic impact. Manitoba is 0.2 million versus the rest of Canada, which is 63.5 million. You referenced that. You want to talk a little bit about why that's important?
well, we're investing $95 million in a Manitoba project. And out of that $95 million, there's only 2 years of employment for Manitoba and 497 for Canada at large. I would suggest that with a project of $95 million, I would think as a decision maker on this project that I would want to see the economic analysis of the other tender or process or bid, whatever it's called.
Sorry, I know you had a list of questions for us to ask, but somebody else can ask questions till I can find it.
Yeah.
Sure, that's good.
Just excuse my naivety in all of this. Help me understand your role, the Mechanical Contractors Association of Manitoba. So why are you here presenting on this? Like, what is your role in all of this? Because you're not the proponent, you represent Electrical Contractors Association. So
And
so just at a high level, I'm trying to understand why you're here.
absolutely. And when members come to us with specific concerns, we sit back and we go, okay, does this fit within the mandate of our membership? And absolutely, when you are when there are concerns about a public hearing process and issues that identify that the intentions of our officials are not followed, and that the recommendation reports are at the level not consistent with the complexity of the industry requirements. And you're talking about public dollars. That's where it falls within our mandate. So we represent the Manitoba businesses who through their investments and their skilled trade people, construct and service Manitoba. Anything to do, just like the Department of Water and Waste. No one really considers them until there's.
So second question, on page 6 and 7, where it had mentioned a fairness advisory has been monitoring the entire procurement process. Is that not enough for your membership to be satisfied with the procurement process that's at hand?
And that's a great question. And I circled back to it several times to sit back and go, hold on a second. What does that line say? And I'm just gonna reread it.
Yeah, page 7.
Yeah. And ultimately, what the concern about was with this statement was not what it said, but what it didn't say.
Okay.
And the fact that you are awarding construction is a complex industry, and this is a bigger project. And this one statement is not enough to suggest that the process itself was fair and that it abided by council's intentions and the expectations of the public trust.
So I guess leading into my next, what are you expecting it to say? Well, you're saying it didn't say something, so what do you feel is missing that would satisfy your membership? Is that a fair question? Can I ask that? I'm assuming the fairness advisory is here?
Yeah, I
No?
would say
I
that,
thought they said.
I would say that if I was a decision maker, from our membership, we would want the decision makers to have the opportunity to review a complete report.
Mhm.
Because what if there was additional context suggesting that, that they felt that the actual scoring was skewed, or that council's intentions weren't incorporated. Like there's more to it than this.
Well, did you, just to follow up, sorry, Chair.
Yeah.
But it's on the same question, but through the chair to You did hear the administration say that the report would be done once the proponent was given. I guess there's probably still things that need to be worked out with whoever gets the bid. So the report would be done.
Yeah,
Um,
so,
Thoughts on
yeah, and I heard that answer, and I put myself in your shoes. And you know, as an association, we work proactively with government. And it's our intention to, work with administration, elected officials. To create a better Manitoba and better Winnipeg. But in 3 years, if that project is going sideways, and this $95 million is budgeted out to 2027, and we're supposed to be breaking ground in 2026. And there's public concern. You as an elected official, do you want to say, well, I only had complete access to the fairness report following my approval process? I don't think that this statement is enough for and it's no ill intent intended, or there's no ill intent. I'm an administrator of a construction association. I'm not a construction specialist. No one at this table honestly is, except for Mr. Dawson himself. I'm not sure as a professional engineer what background Mr. Shanks has in his group. But I can tell you a mega project of this size, this is not enough information for elected officials to move forward without all of the information present. I would, if it was me, I would want to have an in-camera discussion with that fairness.
Okay. I had a question which was just, I think it's just one question. So the ask, I mean, there were a number of things, some of which might have referenced a letter, which may or not, in any event, what your organization's requesting is an independent review of the process. Is what mine looks. Okay.
Yeah, and I was quite repetitive in my report, just in case you're beginning. So you might come across the sentence that well-governed public procurement activities are essential in supporting public and industry trust and confidence. And that's essentially what we're asking for. And we feel that there's an additional stage that needs to occur here to ensure that the questions that we've asked, the intentions of council, and that the RFP process itself were abided by.
If there are no further questions.
There was a post to me yesterday about timeline and impact. There was, does someone want to ask that or kind of sorry?
Apparently not.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for coming out. Thanks for your patience. We obviously have a long, we're aware it's not a light decision. I'll say that. I think we're all aware of that. So, should I get Ms. Kuliana, we're both elected officials together back in 2006 to 10 on the Brandon School. So I think that's public information.
Yes, it
As
is.
Councillor Ely would say, you don't have to disclose who all your friends are. It's not a public, there's no pecuniary interest, but that would be, there's also a photo of us when we honored your late mother, who was a city councillor. So, but thank you for coming down today.
And thank you for those involved. That's great.
All right, Councillor.
Yeah.
One more thing.
Oh, no, to the minute, I have some questions for the administration, sorry.
After the next delegation.
Oh, there's one more delegation.
Yeah.
Sorry,
One more
yes.
delegation.
Yeah.
I'm done though.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
Thank you.
So our next delegate is
Ms. Weave is holding back as well from point of, Ms. Weave is also an engineer, so chiefs. So,
Yeah.
That's a horrible assumption. That's so sexist. I apologize.
No, not at all.
our next delegate is Tanya Paulson, who's joining us over Zoom today from Manitoba Building Trades. You'll have up to 10 minutes if you want to just state your name, please.
there's Ms. Paulson, welcome. Yes.
Yeah, good morning. I guess this is still morning there, counselors. I'm an hour ahead of you. So I'll just get right into it. I appreciate that you guys have spent a lot of time on this already.
We're having trouble hearing you.
Oh,
Yeah,
you said you're having trouble hearing me. Is that any better?
Yeah, we would. I think we're just fixing our audio on our end. Sorry, Tanya, if you, can you hear us at all, Travis?
I can hear you guys.
Cannot hear you. We're trying to solve that problem.
Still nothing, or can you hear me?
I apologize, there's something wrong,
Okay, no problem. Mr. Chair.
I'm not sure what else.
So you can't hear me? We're not good?
We're back.
Okay,
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, now we can hear you.
okay, okay. All right, I'll just get right into it. Again, thank you for allowing me to present as delegation. My name's Tanya Paulson. I'm the Executive Director of Manitoba Building Trades. We represent 13 skilled trade unions, an entirely locally based workforce of the organized sector, working primarily in industrial, commercial, institutional. So, this is, I think, countless times I've been at some form of some council committee presenting on NUPIC. And specifically in this, at this point, I know you guys have just had some longer discussions already this morning. So wanted to make sure we came on to really reiterate support for Ramona's report and all the work that ECAM's done on this. We consider them a valuable industry partner. And sometimes in our industry, it's a bit unique when we have construction associations and labor associations sort of all looking at the same process and coming to really similar questions. I'm also cognizant right now in that my previous written submission was also not found admissible in terms of procedure bylaw. I believe most of you have been, we sent it out to council outside of sort of the meeting structure as well too. But I know that, so I'm going to speak to the recommendations that are in front of you today. But I'm still not entirely clear what part of my original submission was not limited or was not around the criteria for the RFP invitation. So I'm going to try do my best to try to just speak to the recommendation. I think one element that sort of is an additional concern on top of everything else that has been brought forward by ECAM this morning is that social procurement criteria, and again, the intent of council on what the additional social economic outcomes were supposed to be for this project. And so that goes back to the February 24th, 2022 council motion, which was that the project requires bidders to include the following as a part of their bid submission. So specific information on their intended partnerships or self-directed plans to secure a skilled project labor workforce, estimated numbers and of classifications of skilled tradespersons, specific commitments to engage skilled labor, including targets for employments of Indigenous peoples, underrepresented groups within the Manitoba market, and proposed plans and partnerships with organizations to promote employment and training initiatives for the Indigenous and underrepresented groups within the Manitoba market. And that description was pulled specifically from a report prepared for the standing committee on a kind of a history of process. So, that's as written. I think that when we're looking at the recommendation that is brought before you today, I don't see mention of that sort of requirement of something council has already previously determined they want to see as an element in the decision-making structure. So I'm not seeing in the recommendation that's before you a consideration for what we're sitting back when we're just looking at it as a huge stakeholder for local labor on a project that's down the street from some of Canada's most impoverished postal codes where we have social enterprise structure. We have a We Want to Work group that we sit on with the social enterprise community. We have a lot of organizations like Build, like Purpose, like our own sector councils, a lot of funding to go into workforce development. And, we got the city to a point where they agreed that yes, there should be some consideration for local economic return on investment in this. And the recommendation that we're seeing here, I don't need to know, I don't need to know what the referred proponent got in terms of number of points versus the non-preferred proponent. But what I'm seeing here is at what point as the public who are interested in this and as people who are stakeholders for local labor, what are the plans to meet the social procurement objective? So there are 45 points out of 1,000 that's mentioned here. I don't really care what number out of 45, but what are the plans? What is the engagement strategy? Because, we have a social enterprise coalition that's intended to bring workforce development through construction opportunities. And I can say very confidently that, we haven't really been exiting many people. We haven't, as far as I know, we haven't exited anyone to go work on the first phase of this project. So we've already gone through the entire headworks phase, and there's no organization that I'm aware of that has an MOU, that has any type of training plans in place, any type of exiting strategy from a social enterprise to an ICI job. These are all simple things that can be in place, and it's there are a lot of things that are concerning about the recommendation before you. And again, MCAM and ECAM's report and Ramona has done a great job at highlighting a lot of that. But from a local hiring, local socioeconomic impact, ability to leverage the biggest project in our province since Kiosk, and we don't have a plan or a proposed plan that you guys can see in front of you today to say with some confidence that this preferred proponent, points aside or inclusive of points, is also going to be able to deliver local jobs and training and apprenticeship opportunities. That's where I'm at with this. And I think that's sort of to contain it, I think, with what was in the what's within here in the recommendation, without genuinely concerned to go off on too many tangents, because I don't know I'm not familiar with this policy. I don't know what's admissible or not. But I feel like containing it to the specific, page 5, social procurement evaluation categories. I'm drawing concern about the criteria set out in the invitation to tender, I guess, if that's what I'm limited to. Concerns that you are not seeing an informed approach on this person is going to be building $1 billion, $95 million worth of work. And we need to be cognizant of that. So I will stop myself there and take any questions. Last thing I just to reiterate, we are in support MCAM as well to look independent, a third-party review of the evaluation criteria of the city processes to make sure that there was equity in both proponents, and not losing sight that one proponent is bidding again as a local joint venture with a ton of local employment that would come just naturally from that. And I'm not seeing any of that or any consideration that would say that was so far outweighed by the preferred proponent. So yes, that I'll leave it there, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I think you did a good job there, walking the fine line of, I think all of that was admissible, so thank you for that. Any questions for Ms. Paulson? No, okay. Just on the social procurement, which was the large focus of your comments. So I appreciate what you're saying, which is I don't need to know what others, no, maybe that was on another thing. That was on a different issue, but to be blunt, you're wanting us to ask questions about the local impact here. I mean, you talked about apprenticeship to employment to training.
I think I'm really cautious that the intent of the February 2022 motion, where you did ask those questions already fairly as a council, and there's nothing in here that provides answers to those questions to inform your decision-making structure. And maybe that's not the decision-making structure, but you're going to be awarding, you're potentially, and we would say just to reiterate, let's just take a beat, one more beat, and see what be able to have the capacity to answer and ask all of those questions more fully. But what you have here today doesn't, I mean, the recommendation doesn't mention that motion. It doesn't provide any of the information that motion sought to have put forward. So I would say, Councillor, you have asked the question already, just this recommendation doesn't do anything in terms of answering it, if the intent was to have that information to inform a decision.
Okay, well phrased. All right, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, thank you. Thanks for your patience, long morning to get that, so thanks, and thanks. You've certainly spoken to us a number of times over South End and North End over the years, so thanks.
Can't get rid of me that easy. No, just kidding.
All right, very good. Okay, thank you.
And that concludes the delegations for today.
All right, so I'm anticipating, well, we could have, they wanted to ask questions in public session or in camera or?
I think some of my questions should be in public. I don't think they're needing to be private, but I will be probably having questions that will need to go in camera first. So maybe we can start with the questions that should be public.
That's my preference, yeah, very good.
So just in terms of the, can you maybe walk us through it, especially for us that maybe don't understand? Because the Independent Fairness Commissioner report mentioned was kind of, there was a reference, there's an actual report that comes forward, but it was raised, and I think that's a fair question to ask. Wouldn't we normally want this information prior to making a decision? Can you maybe walk us through, why that isn't here? Maybe what happens after, a proponent has been granted the contract? And
I'll turn it over to Cynthia for details, but essentially because the process includes, one of the steps in the process is a debrief with the unsuccessful proponent.
Right.
The final kind of full fairness review is done after that debrief, which is after the award, which is after our approval here. So that document isn't complete, but the other steps, like the endorsement we have in the admin report for you is a status as of this time, I guess is a way to put it.
It's standard language, right? This is, at this point in time, this is what we have from the fairness advisor, and like Tim spoke to the process already. That's after the debrief.
So that now that once a proponent has been chosen, do you go more into depth in terms of the procurement? There's questions around hiring local, making sure it's social procurement. When does the deep dive into that policy? Is it more now, or is it more after the proponent has been chosen?
That's a really great question. So this particular award, including the economic impact assessment, is specifically for the initial work. So this is the engineering, which does not have a local labor. What we will do, part of this first design phase includes development of the design build agreement. So we will be working collaboratively with them to set those baselines for local or social procurement. So there's the social procurement includes, employment for Indigenous peoples, underrepresented groups, and training and everything. So we will be working collectively with them. And again, the design build agreement comes before this committee. So there will be clarity on what the targets are. And part of this first phase and the early works will be collecting information. So just for perspective, on our Headworks project, we have approximately 90% local labor right now. So,
Sorry, how much?
pardon? 90. 22% roughly, of which identify as, self-identify as Indigenous. So these numbers are always changing. This was a point in time. But I can say that on that project, for example, they do strive very hard to get local labor because that's what's most economic for them. So they are self-incentivized, as most contractors are, to hire local labor. So that'll be something that we are working collectively with them as we move forward.
Sorry, I have to ask, because I know it'll come up, where was it we said a 5%? I mean, if we're
Yes.
22%,
So
didn't we write in a 5?
we
Was it
did.
that one where we had the 5%?
That was just our entry into the biosolids. That was part of the RFQ process. That was never our intent. We want to work with social procurement stakeholders as we move through this, the construction market, we want to work with everybody to establish good baselines, and that will be the plan. And that's one of the benefits of the collaborative progressive design build is we can work together with the proponent during this phase to establish our goals.
Okay, and so there's gonna be that design build in front of us.
Correct.
Will it have, then it will have more outlined,
It will.
our social procurement guidelines, our policy, because we've directed policies.
Correct.
Okay,
We can speak to that, and the economic impact will then will reflect the construction. So right now, it's not reflecting the construction side of things, which is where that social procurement was for construction. So that will look vastly different.
We should also just say that economic impact analysis where it's the 0.2 million looks
Yeah.
very small.
right,
As an assumption, like when we look at the design proponents and where the head offices are,
Mhm.
Ontario, Alberta, this sort of thing, it won't be reflected in there when we're populating that initial calculation with head offices of firms. When they're actually doing the design, they're technically, I know you said there were local labor, there's local, Stantec has a local office, there will be local dollars spent that will adjust that number. But to Cynthia's point, the next phase of this, the construction phase, is where obviously people are physically here to build it. So those numbers will change. So hopefully that adds a little bit of context to the table.
While we're on that, not to jump to you, but just then, so if the GDP measure is supposed to be a multiplier effect, like if we're dropping 95 million in the GDP impact and all of Canada is 63.7, one would think then that some amount, tens of millions is going outside of Canada.
Again, this is based on head office locations for the design firms that are part of the preferred proponent joint venture, some of which are located in Canada, some of which are located in the US. Assumptions were made very high level on, which design firm is gonna do which portion, and then we use the head office. That doesn't mean that's how the work happens. Like Tim said, Stantec is not located, their head office is Alberta, I believe.
It's here.
They have an office here, and if the design work is done here, that's not gonna be reflected in here, because we haven't dove into that level of detail of which office is doing it. That's not the point we're at. So we used head office for the economic impact.
So just at a high level, like Stantec, Alberta, Hatch is involved in here, they're in Ontario, AECon, Canadian, it's in Ontario. Oscar Renda, one of the larger constructors, they're from Texas, and MWH head offices in Colorado. So it's a mix, and that's the, again, it's an equation, it takes some assumptions. When we get into the construction side, when we want to talk about what this does to the local economy, when we have a giant construction project active, those numbers will be different.
and so then to really get into more of the criteria waiving, I think will be in camera for those discussions. Yeah, just to be clear.
Question,
Sure.
high level, if I'm out of place, please let me know. This is the design, so just clarify, this is just the design build step one,
Design phase
Phase.
agreement
okay,
of the overall.
of the overall, okay. Has there been examples where when we start, once you've done the design phase or build or whatever we call this stage and you have finalized it and worked out all the, she had some really good questions to talk about the social procurement, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
The next step is you'll be issuing another RFP.
No,
No.
it'll be, we'll work collectively with our partners to develop a design build agreement.
Negotiation,
Yeah,
you still have to approve it. It's-
We
you
still have to approve it at this
Correct.
stage.
yes,
That goes for public tender.
no,
Like we negotiate those details and we come for here for permission to proceed.
Okay,
And with presenting all the details that we just talked, like the.
like you'll get another report like this.
yeah,
Only instead of saying, I think I'm just looking here, and well, it'll be another, it doesn't say design phase, but it'll be another report like this, but it will be specifically written to the design build agreement, similar to what was brought to committee for Headworks. So
yeah, I
that
don't
came,
remember the Henricks.
yeah,
sorry.
so, and that was actually, I don't believe you were on committee, but same concept, is that it comes to this committee
Mhm.
for approval for us to enter into the next step.
And we don't, the way this is arranged is that when we're negotiating that next package to come here for approval, if we have the option to just keep the design and go and tender and take it away. If we don't want to negotiate and continue with this group, the city owns the design at that stage. So we have an off ramp, that's what we were talking before, we have an off ramp to go somewhere else if we wanted. That would have to be a tender
A tender.
or
Okay.
RFP and let's remove it.
Okay, but if I can interrupt a wee bit, so we'll own it, but it won't be finished.
That's
It won't be
correct.
built, yeah. it won't be-
No, I mean, the design won't be finished yet,
That's correct. So we would need to have,
because you'll already be trying to look at getting, shovels in the ground, but the design is not finished yet, so
We
is
would,
that gonna be an issue if we decide, no, we don't want you to continue with you on the next phase? Or what we wanna put it up for tender?
We
But
would
we're
have
not
to-
finished yet with design, is that gonna be a problem?
we would have the design completed. It would need to be completed, yes.
Okay. Putting it out there.
Any concern with the time frame here, the payment out, as was identified by one of the delegates, does stretch to 2027. Well, I don't know, I mean, I'm not sure if we need to be in the grass when we need to be finished by December 31st, 2030, it's the right, it's the idea, that's the next, we haven't awarded that phase on what we haven't awarded this phase, but is that a concern that this is, or is the design?
Part of the schedule.
Okay, so this doesn't suggest that we're getting in the ground.
Sorry,
This doesn't inevitably lead to a later start date.
No, it doesn't.
Actual start.
this is all part of our schedule.
So, Mr. Chair, my questions now I think are related to more in camera, so.
Thus, we would entertain a motion then.
My motion.
Counselor Noe, camera, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. We've been a very thorough discussion, a very thorough opportunity to ask questions of our staff. But still more to come, I guess, is that we've landed. So I think I'll turn it over to Councillor Gilroy, who wanted to.
Can I get a layover up to 30 days? But our intention is to come back on Thursday because we are prorogued. But just as far as our clerk is concerned, we have to say a layover up to 30 days because we have to get the mayor's grant his permission to have us hold a special meeting.
Right, so Brad, my understanding is as of Monday, we're on prorogue and we shouldn't or perhaps even can't schedule meetings. So again, this doesn't need to go through EPC and council. So we're somewhat in that way. So the idea would be, if possible, to go lunch Thursday, but again, as Council Gilroy says, we need the mayor's office to sign off on time the special meetings. All right, everybody found the motion?
Yeah.
Thank you, colleagues. So it's a very good session. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye, I support that. So that is passed without opposition, so we'll be back, but that was good work on that. And if we can have, why don't I turn the chair over to Council Gilroy as I'm chair of the Kirk, and I will move that, I'll move the recommendation put forward, I guess the motion put forward from that committee on July 5th, and that would allow that committee to start its work. So,
All those in favor?
aye,
Okay, motion is carried.
very good.
Back to you.
Anything else?
Everything, just to adjourn.
Okay, I'll move to adjourn.
All right, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary, that's carried. All right, thank you.